Fantastic, Tracy. Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for joining today. Excited to continue our series and looking at the business case, and specifically today, building the business case for the cloud and cloud ERP in the context of Microsoft's Dynamics AX. For those of you that may not be familiar with Nucleus Research, we're an analyst firm headquartered in Boston, working globally, taking a case-based investigative approach to understanding the value of technology. We've published more than 400 return on investment case studies looking at deployments such as ERP over the past 15 years. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of the data and insights that we've gained in looking at the marketplace, as well as some key tips on building a business case for moving to the cloud, whether you're looking at an upgrade, a new deployment, or an ongoing project today. Share some of the data and insights that we've gained in talking to customers about their overall cloud strategies. So let's talk about the return on investment from ERP for a minute. Our latest data shows that on average, ERP delivers $7.23 for every dollar spent.
So that's a great number. How has that trended over time?
Sure, Tracy. It's interesting. If we look at that, that's actually up 36% from when we did the same calculations. It's based on an aggregate of the case studies that we published just 5 years ago. So more than a third increase in the return on investment from ERP. And it probably won't surprise you to know that a significant part of that bump is from what we call the cloud ROI multiplier. So if we look more closely at return on investment, we find that cloud applications deliver on average 1.7 times the return on investment of on-premise ones.
So Rebecca, we often think about cloud as just lower upfront costs. Is there a bigger picture?
There is, Tracy, and lower upfront cost is one piece, but there are other factors that play into the cloud ROI multiplier as well. Lower initial costs, but lower ongoing costs are very important as we think about configuration versus customization. That means less ongoing IT support, both for maintaining solutions and for taking advantage of upgrades. It also provides greater flexibility, so I can add, expand, or extend my application over time without the costs traditionally associated with changing an on-premise application. Other facts that play into that cloud ROI multiplier is faster deployment. We find average implementation time is 4 to 5 months, and we find faster time to value and thus reduced risk by going with a cloud deployment instead of an on-premise ERP one. Another area where we find cloud playing a factor is really in the flexibility and enabling individual users, groups, or even the entire company to extend, expand, and access the application as needed over time, as their business needs change or as they grow. We see cloud ERP driving significant growth for organizations. In fact, we find cloud ERP companies are growing on average at 2.5 times the pace of those with more traditional on-premise systems. And a lot of that, Tracy, has to do with productivity. Because I can access an application from anywhere with mobile devices, I can set up temporary sites. I can quickly provision contractors. I can enable new offices to be up and running very quickly. I can make more productive use of my employees' time.
Yeah, I know on a previous webcast that you and Christian talked about Microsoft's mobile strategy. So why is it important in the context of cloud?
Sure. So one of the things that cloud gives us is a much more iterative development and deployment strategy. Obviously, if I have a mobile access to my application and my application is running in the cloud, I can access my data, manipulate it, and manage transactions wherever I am, provided I have a wireless connection. But the other key point in what we've seen with Microsoft's mobile strategy is the ability to build very focused, custom-driven apps that enable a particular person in a particular job function to be much more productive, whether it's approving invoices, setting workflows on their way, entering expenses, checking on customer orders. They can do much more with a mobile device when that data is in the cloud.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we've talked about sort of the technical aspects of the cloud and why it's important. But for the finance types in the house, I wanted to point out as well that there is a real benefit in terms of CapEx versus OpEx with cloud applications. And there's a real implication here, in fact, that we find that just the shift from capital expenditures to operational expenditures that's driven by cloud projects effectively gives companies a 5% discount on the overall budget of the project, simply because of the tax rules. So simply put, moving to the cloud is also a great way to stick it to the man. But as we think about more broadly the implications of cloud, Tracy, some of the other things that we're seeing on an ongoing basis is reduced integration challenge. And this is where we've seen Microsoft have some very interesting announcements over the past couple of months. And what we find is if we look at the old days, the integration challenge was because companies heavily customize their applications, fewer than 1 in 10 of them are on the latest version of those core applications. That means that data transfer is latent. It means reporting is slow and often backward-looking instead of forward-looking. So as we think about moving to the cloud and the integration capabilities of the cloud, what we find is that cloud is a great way to close that technology gap, to reduce the risk and disruption associated with upgrades and with managing all of those integrations. If we think about it in terms of value, it really comes down to this. If we think about time and value and maximizing value of the application over time, cloud enables us to change the kind of upgrade path, the kind of upgrade cycle that integrations and customizations typically tied us to with traditional enterprise apps. In the old days, we would think about a stair-step path to upgrade. I would wait to upgrade. I might skip a few upgrades until I really had a serious pain point or a big motivation or a push from the vendor to upgrade to the next version of the application, giving us a real stair-step path in terms of value. It simply wasn't cost effective, and it was too disruptive to upgrade every time there was a significant upgrade because of the cost of testing, managing, fixing integrations that might be broken by integrations or customizations. The challenge with that approach is you find you're really leaving money on the table. Each time a vendor delivers innovations in the product, you're not taking advantage of them. So effectively, you're not maximizing the value of your application over time. And what we see in the cloud space is that because upgrades are less disruptive, less costly, and can be more effectively adopted, cloud really closes that technology gap and enables customers to maximize the value from their application and take advantage of the investments that vendors are making in new functionality and new capabilities. Really, if you're paying license maintenance every year, you should be taking advantage of it and maximizing the opportunity for returns to the organization. And cloud really enables companies to much more effectively do that.
Right, so moving to the cloud really helps companies stay on modern technology.
Absolutely, Tracy. And what we see is, as we think about modern, we're really looking at, first, the configuration piece that's key, that drives nearly seamless upgrades, that enables companies to quickly extend their applications, to integrate them, to go from any device, but also to take advantage of what's coming in the surrounding ecosystem, particularly as we think about Microsoft. So the analytical capabilities, the mobile capabilities, the big data, and in-memory capabilities, all of those things that vendors are willing to continue to deliver to customers, cloud simply makes it easier and less risky for them to take advantage of them.
Right.
So if we talk a little bit about Microsoft's mobile strategy, certainly the modern app framework, we're seeing both partners and internal developers work to develop, manage, and distribute applications. And the great thing is there's a positive network effect there. So as more partners develop those applications, Microsoft has shipped their own as well and continues to ship new applications. We can have much more task and work function specific applications for end users, so we can really drive greater returns from productivity. We can automate areas that would have been manual before and really streamline that communication of data, taking advantage of not just Dynamics AX, but the Azure cloud and the application integration framework. So further simplifying things for users, further driving accessibility and access to data and transactions.
Yeah, we're starting to hear more and more hype around the Internet of Things. Is mobile part of that? And what are you seeing? What else are you seeing from Microsoft?
Sure. So yes, we are hearing a lot of hype about the Internet of Things and connected devices. And I'll tell you, my refrigerator isn't ordering its own milk yet. But we are seeing.
No, mine either.
Yeah, we are seeing some interesting things there, and you know, I remember, Tracy, probably 15 years ago going to the Microsoft home in Redmond where the refrigerator was ordering its milk. So certainly Microsoft has been thinking about this for a long time. You know, the mobile piece does play a part, certainly as we think about how customers can identify themselves, share data about their location, employees being able to log into work, for example, using their mobile device. Certainly there's an IoT spin there. But we're definitely seeing advancements in other areas of Microsoft and within the AX team themselves about how they address IoT. So the new Azure IoT suite is really designed to support those applications that go hand in hand with ERP, things like remote monitoring, asset management, predictive maintenance, and certainly what we're seeing from the analytics team at Microsoft with the Azure Stream Analytics, as well as support for Windows 10 for IoT. It's going to really open up the opportunities for companies that are taking advantage of the latest investments that Microsoft has made in IoT to drive business benefits across their organization. So that's a lot to talk about and a lot to think about if we think about mobile, cloud, IoT, big data, and analytics. And we find in working with clients a lot of times, Tracy, the toughest thing is sort of putting everything in context as they think about building the business case. Everybody comes up with a laundry list of benefits and a number of different projects, and everyone's project is a priority, where we see IT resources being increasingly constrained and challenged to deliver the business. So one of the key things we talk about with clients when we're talking about building the business case is really about how do you prioritize those opportunities. If you look at those lists of pet projects that every department wants, how do you determine which ones are likely to deliver the greatest value? And it really breaks down into 3 steps that we think about in building the business case. First, identifying those key areas of real returns. Second, estimating those actual costs and benefits. And finally, looking at the key metrics, return on investment and payback. And I'll talk a little bit more about the metrics in a minute because it is important to have those sort of in mind and put them in context. But the first step is really identifying and assessing the opportunity. And when we work with clients on building the business case for something like a new cloud ERP application, an extension, a new mobile app, or additional capabilities or enhancements that they want to add, if we look at that laundry list of benefits, what we find is using a few key factors can really help them to quickly determine where they're likely to get the greatest bang for their buck. So as you think about building the business case for cloud ERP, the first 2 factors you want to look at are breadth and repeatability. These make up typically 90% of the returns from an ERP business case. The more people, applications, or processes a project touches, and the more frequently it touches it, the greater the potential returns. So breadth and repeatability really go hand in hand and can be your guide in identifying both the project areas that are likely to deliver the greatest ROI and where you want to focus your efforts on your business case and on adoption. Beyond breadth and repeatability, we also look at risk, collaboration, and knowledge. Projects that change a company's profile in those 3 areas are likely to deliver significant returns as well. So we tell clients, start with breadth and repeatability, and then look at risk, collaboration, and knowledge to identify where are those top areas in your business case where you're likely to get the greatest returns. Now, I know it's just after lunch and just after breakfast for some of us, but I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about math, just because it's important as you're talking to the financial types to be able to put those metrics in context. Two key metrics that we encourage customers to look at when they are evaluating the return on investment potential, evaluating that overall business case for their ERP deployments. The first one is payback. A payback is the time period needed before net savings equals initial cost. And it's an excellent measure of risk, probably the most important measure that most CFOs look at today.
So why is payback a key measure of risk?
Well, Tracy, particularly when technology is evolving rapidly, like we see in the cloud ERP space, payback is a measure of when I have my cash back and I can reinvest it elsewhere. So the faster the payback period, the less likelihood that I don't have any money in my wallet when the next big thing, the next big innovation that delivers value comes up to the market, comes up for sale. So we tell customers today, think about payback period as a way, particularly in the evolving cloud space, to understand how much risk exposure you have and how long it will be before you'll likely have cash back to be able to reinvest in other initiatives and projects. Now, obviously, the metric that we all talk about is return on investment. That's an important one to look at as well. It's important because it enables you to compare other projects to simply investing in a CD or keeping your money in the bank. Now, when we work with clients, we use a 3-year time horizon, a reasonable time frame to think about the overall returns from a project over time. And it's really the net savings over 3 years divided by that initial cost. So payback and return on investment are the two key metrics that we look at. Obviously, there are some other ones out there, but those are the core ones that we find CFOs and business decision makers looking at today. The third metric I'll mention is total cost of ownership. We certainly hear a lot about it. And as companies look to the cloud, TCO becomes a very important question. And the only challenge with TCO is it really looks at costs and ignores any benefits.
So I have to ask, that's a very cute picture of a puppy. What does a puppy have to do with TCO?
Well, anybody who's ever had a puppy knows that absolutely nothing. A puppy has absolutely nothing to do with total cost of ownership. In fact, if we bought puppies based on TCO, nobody would ever have a dog. It's an important way to think about it because it's great for comparing similar puppies, great for understanding the cost, the overall cost of the puppy, but not a way to prioritize which puppy may work best for you, or even choosing a different pet. Think about it, if we thought about every decision, even puppies, and looked at total cost of ownership, none of us would ever have a pet.
That's very true.
So it's a good thing to remind yourself of when you're thinking about the budgeting perspective that you always want to be looking at the upside as well, and that's why return on investment and payback are so important. Realistically, TCO is just the eye of return on investment, so it's important to keep that in mind. Now, once we've talked about the metrics a little bit, I want to talk about the toughest part, which is really how to quantify benefits and think about benefits. So really there are two types of benefits. There are the direct benefits, those that produce a direct cost savings, and then there are the indirect benefits. These are the things that we often get marketed to about increased innovation, agility, a lot of the things that we hear around IoT are about those sort of indirect benefits. The challenge, though, with indirect benefits is how we assess them. And for the cold-hearted CFO, it really comes down to how believable are they? Do I actually believe that they're going to be achieved? And how variable are they? If I make an estimate today, how consistent is it going to be throughout the life of my project, across different groups, across even different individuals? So once you've identified those top areas of real benefit by looking at breadth, repeatability, Then you want to say, how believable are my benefits? How variable are they? And if we think about types of benefits starting from sort of first order, second, third, to fourth order benefits, recognize that as we go out from more direct to more indirect, we lose believability. Now, from a CFO perspective, that likely means they're going to be discounting those benefits more aggressively. So here are a couple of quick tips. First order benefits, direct savings, a tangible action that will happen. We can cut a budget number today. By going to the cloud, we'll eliminate server maintenance. By going to the cloud, we'll reduce IT staff. By going to the cloud, we'll save on VPN. Those sort of specific items that we are going to achieve that impact a budget number. Those to the CFO have 100% believability.
So, Rebecca, how many companies are making business cases today based on direct savings only?
Well, certainly, if they can make it the case based on direct savings only, they're in great shape. But what we find, Tracy, is that because so many companies are looking at incremental changes, that most do need to look at those second, third, and fourth order benefits. It's just important that they put them in context so they understand as they're pitching to the financial decision maker those key impacts on believability and variability, and how they build that into their business case, not just to get a business case that enables them to get the budget, but as a roadmap for really a successful deployment. So, for example, if we talk about second order benefits, these are those semi-direct savings. We've all been in the meeting where somebody says it's likely we can reduce the cost. We think we will. We hope we will. We agree we should. If there's a hedging word in your benefit statement, you're likely looking at a second order benefit. On average, CFOs put the believability of these benefits at about 70%. So if you're moving down the believability curve towards second order, those semi-direct savings, those expected hedging words, recognize that their overall value is likely to be discounted to a certain extent. Now, the third order benefits are where we really see changes in ERP today, and they're really about productivity. A single step between the action and the user that drives time savings. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we calculate those time savings. But believability for the CFO on third order benefits goes down to 40%, largely because there's a lot of variability given the changing skill sets of employees today, their dependence on older applications, their willingness to use new applications, their affinity for mobile devices. All of those things are going to impact how likely they are to achieve the expected productivity gain from a change in ERP. So again, believability of 40%, and then as we go further out the believability curve, we really have those very indirect savings. These are the things like an application that makes managers more productive, so they're better managers, so their employees are happier. If you find you have a couple of conjunctions in your statement of benefit, what you're looking at is a fourth order, very indirect benefit. Often innovation, growth, these sorts of things fall into this category. And what we find, Tracy, is that for the CFO, the believability is extremely low. In fact, things like increased customer satisfaction, we often find customers make the business case instead by turning a fourth order benefit into a first order benefit. Now, how do I do that? By saying I would need 3 additional sales reps to provide the same sort of care and support for my customers that I would with the technology, instead of avoiding hires. And that's a common business case for growth, which on its own is a fourth order benefit. So I know we've gone through a lot really quickly here. A few other tips on building a business case. The important thing to remember is that building a business case is just your starting point. For a CFO, it's just a decision tool, but also a roadmap for monitoring that investment moving forward. So once you know what those key benefits are, their believability, their variability, and what you expect to achieve, you want to set out some milestones. How you expect to achieve those productivity savings, whether it's in terms of employee attrition, increased growth, employees taking on new tasks or other opportunities. Certainly in a lot of cases with cloud ERP, we find resource-constrained IT departments can now focus their efforts on delivering new mobile applications, for example, taking advantage of analytics capabilities, being able to drive more reporting and dashboards to the business. So it's not about employee attrition in the case of the cloud in IT departments, but really their ability to take on more strategic tasks. And for the CIO, that often means they can retain their best talent because their talent can be faced with new challenges and dealing with more innovative and interesting technologies. The other important thing to think about in your business case is calculating the worst case scenario. The worst case you really calculate as a milestoning practice as well. If the worst case still delivers the returns that are good enough for a positive return on investment, that's a very strong factor to be able to share with the financial decision maker. It allows them to prioritize based on minimizing risk, and also identifies the magnitude of potential swing in return on investment. So, for example, if you expect a 300% ROI in your business case, in your worst case is 2%, you've got a lot of variability in your expected benefits and costs. Worst case scenarios are great for holding people accountable. Rather than holding them accountable to the best estimate, holding them to the worst case lets you have some wiggle room, some negotiating room, recognizing that financial decision makers are always looking at expected and worst case scenario when they think about any investment. Things will change and things will go wrong. Worst case enables you to plan for the inevitable and be prepared to manage your project if some of those benefits or costs are more variable than you expected. And finally, to go back to variability, a very important thing to think about always is those human factors, particularly as we look at modernizing applications, the cloud and ERP. Those individual factors, human factors, drive the great variability of third-order benefits around productivity. And that's an area where you have to think about not only the age and technology experience of your employees, but their aptitude for learning new technologies, and really what's in it for them in the application in terms of driving not just better transactions for the company, but overall productivity.
What about usability? How do you see Microsoft's usability and the Office 365 integration playing into these factors?
Yeah, Tracy, that's a really important point. You know, we see more and more companies looking at the Office 365 integration, and the usability of Microsoft is really a key point in the application. In fact, we find customers more and more are moving to the cloud for Office 365 first, and then once their IT department has experience with the cloud and sees, you know, the benefits for themselves, they see the opportunity to go further with other applications in the cloud. I think, too, we'll see more and more, as we talked about in the last webinar, the sort of dark cockpit approach, bringing in the intelligence of software to bear, bringing embedded analytics into the applications themselves to drive better decision making, really making it easier for users to be productive with fewer click-throughs, less screens to go through to actually do their jobs. And when it comes to mobile devices, not just exposing data on a device, but using Microsoft tools and technology to make very productivity-focused, user-focused, user-friendly applications will drive greater adoption and ultimately greater returns from the application. So as we think about this, we've covered a lot of ground today, certainly, but what we see is that cloud delivers significant both initial and ongoing benefits. That cloud ROI multiplier we talked about at 1.7 is very real. And it's not just about low cost or low initial cost, but really the ability to maximize the value of the application over time to take advantage of the investments that vendors are making in delivering new innovations in areas like mobile, analytics, and IoT, and really being able to make sure that if you are spending on an ongoing application strategy, that you're maximizing your return on investment by taking advantage of the most modern ERP capabilities. In building the business case, companies should think about breadth and repeatability to identify those top areas of real benefit, and then use payback and return on investment as well as TCO to evaluate their business case and make sure that that business case is not just a spreadsheet to get budget, but a real tool and a roadmap for managing a successful deployment. And finally, remember, the best business case has typically only 3 or 4 benefits. Focusing on a few strong benefits that are believable will help you build both a more credible business case and one that you can really focus on milestoning to be as achievable as possible. So we've covered a lot of ground very quickly today. There are a number of resources, free resources that are available on the Nucleus Research website, including our free ERP financial modeling tool, a number of pieces evaluating the latest technologies and announcements from Microsoft, as well as our knowledge library, which contains a complete guide to building the business case, as well as understanding different metrics and measuring the returns for productivity. And with that, I will thank you all very much for your attention. And Tracy, back to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I think that we've got some time here to answer some questions, and I see some questions in the queue. Let me pull them up here. So first question, Rebecca, what are the elements that make up payback?
So payback is really a calculation, and it's the time that you effectively break even, that you get your money back. So in structuring the calculation, you want to look at the initial and ongoing costs for software, consulting, any hardware, personnel, training, and then those direct and indirect benefits. And really the payback is when you net, when you have that initial cash back. So it's important for looking really upfront at how much risk you have and how long you'll have to wait before you get your investment back. What we see with cloud ERP applications is typically payback in as little as 6 months. And we tell organizations if they're looking at cloud ERP and their payback is stretching to that 9 to 12 month mark, it's probably time to reevaluate and look at, do they want to do things more incrementally or in phases so their project can be more self-funding.
Okay. Another question, is cloud ERP or enterprise resource planning secure, and what are the risks?
Sure. That's a question that comes up a lot, and I think it's one we'll continue to hear, particularly as we see highly visible hacking incidents and questions about data security. I think it's important to look at your vendor and look at the steps that the vendor has put in place to ensure security and to understand their security policies as well as their data centers. And I think one of the things that we've seen certainly with the investments by Microsoft and others in data centers globally is recognizing that security is very important. I would point out, however, that the resources, and part of the advantage of the cloud is that you get all of the resources of the vendor to bear in supporting your application. And we find in a lot of cases with cloud applications, individual companies simply couldn't or wouldn't spend the amount of ongoing effort and resources on security that their cloud vendor spends for them.
Okay. And then, so another question then, would you say that cloud is for everyone?
Cloud is certainly an opportunity for companies moving forward. If you're not planning to change, grow, or update your application, on-premise may honestly be a better choice for you. But we see organizations today that are looking to grow, that are looking to take advantage of new technologies and innovations, that are looking to continue to remain competitive, that at least part of their application footprint is likely to be a cloud strategy.
Right. And then how can you be sure productivity benefits are actually achieved?
Oh, that's a great one, and that question. That's where milestoning really becomes important. And as we talk about productivity benefits, understanding what we expect, and then what are those impacts we expect to see to the business. So talking with an AX customer the other day, they had pretty lofty ambitions for productivity savings for their sales and operational staff. But what they did was look at, if they freed up that time, what other work would those people be doing? So not just the time savings, which we all know doesn't transfer efficiently into additional time work, but how would the organization change to take advantage of those time savings so they could do additional work? We see this a lot in the cloud space as well when we look at IT departments, where they save a significant amount of their time. The good news is in IT, it seems like there's always more to do. There are always more projects and delivery deadlines coming up. So cloud is one area where the productivity savings are pretty readily recognized in the IT department.
Yeah, okay. And then our last question is also around payback. What kind of payback should a company expect from ERP?
Yeah, really what we see today, a payback typically of 6 to 9 months, and that's not unusual for cloud. Companies do go longer than that, but they need to recognize that given the pace of change, how many updates will Dynamics make to AX over the next 12 months, for example? Given the pace of change, a slow deployment, a slow payback puts you at risk of not being able to stay competitive. Again, the advantage of cloud is being to iterate and change over time. So taking a more phased approach rather than a big bang approach, so a project can be self-funding and a 6 or 9 month payback is a pretty common strategy today.
Right, okay. Well, I think that is all of the questions that we have in the queue. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much, Rebecca, for your time and for this great presentation, and to remind everyone that this replay will be sent out via email to everyone who attended, and then to wish everyone a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.